Hey everyone, welcome back to RJK English. We're on part two of talking about Rilke, and he has two poems. Today we're going to cover the first poem, Ich lebe mein Leben in wachsenden Ringen, or I live my life in growing orbits. Um, the importance of covering poetry is one, we're going to talk about a couple things regarding English, such as English is a Germanic language. We are also going to talk about life in a deeper fashion. How do we describe the difficult things to describe in English? But plus, we're going to have fun, and poetry can be quite fun. So let me introduce Rilke a little bit, or Rilke. I don't say his name properly. He was a German poet. For me, Rilke is the key for Westerners to approach Eastern philosophy, poetry, and thought. So I don't want to make a hard distinction between, oh, the West is this way and the East is this way. There's not hard distinctions, but there are some differences. The West usually approaches things either as this is reality, this is religion. So I'm at work, I'm just working rationally on my job. This is the way I should do it. And then when I'm at church, I'm religious. Or maybe when I'm dealing with family, I'm religious. We see these two as separate. Making a generalization for the East, there's not necessarily this hard separation, but also there's variations in how people see religion in the East. Japan, in some ways, you could see, as far as I know, they're somewhat atheist. Not really, but according to us here in the West, we would think that. But why is Rilke a good person to bridge this gap? Because he's really talking about contemplation. Contemplation is when you think hard, when you think deeply, but not hard. You are watching the movements of your thought, the movements of your heart, the movements of life. This is poetry. You're observing and you're thinking deeply, but not hard, somewhat like the Buddha. The Buddha. The Buddha. He thought deeply. So did Lao Tzu. Also thought very deeply about what life was. Rilke is somewhat the same, but he is Western. So, starting with the first poem, one, you should know that in English, this is a translation. So it is not perfect. It's also, you can tell, it does not rhyme, meaning like in rap music or really in any music, you know, Canadian, Freudian, uh, cup, up. These things rhyme. The sounds rhyme. You can tell this does not rhyme. And a lot of modern English poetry does not rhyme. But in German, he did. He rhymed very well. Ich lebe mein Leben in wachsenden Ringen, die sich über die Dinge ziehen. Ich werde den letzten, vielleicht nicht vollbringen, aber versuchen will ich ihn. These rhyme. So let's look at this poem for what it is. I live my life in growing orbits, which move out over the things of the world. What is an orbit? An orbit is like the moon around the earth. It orbits the earth like this. Sometimes we talk about people being in our orbit, meaning I have a friend, he is around me, he is in my orbit, he is in my world, right? A person that I don't talk to, they're out of my orbit, just like Venus is outside of the orbit of the Earth, though both are in orbit around the sun. So we can also talk about this. I had it in my mind how I was going to use orbit in a different way. Oh, when I was in Malaysia, I was in the orbit of China. You could feel the influence of China there. Even though Malaysia is its own country, you could feel the orbit of China there. When I'm in India or west of there, I feel the orbit of the United States or the European Union. You feel their influence, you feel their pull. But in Malaysia, I felt the orbit of China. Well, Rilke is saying that he lives his life in growing orbits. So an orbit is like this around something. What does it mean to be growing orbits? It means to be wider and wider and wider. Another poet wrote, the falcon is flying in growing orbits, and the center can't hold. And he talks about how as the falcon gets wider, it gets further away from the falconer. Anyways, that's a little bit too much. But so he's going in orbits. What is he doing? He's letting more of the world, he's letting himself encompass more of the world. More of the world is coming into his orbit as he widens and widens. How does he widen? Maybe by reading and by knowledge. He learns more about the world. As you learn more about the world, that comes into your orbit. As I learned about Japan, all of a sudden Japan is in my orbit. And as I'm teaching people from Japan, all of a sudden Japan is in my orbit. I start to know Japanese geography. It matters to me what the Japanese writing system is because it is in my orbit now. So you can also do this by taking time to meditate on life or by experiencing life. The more we experience the life, the more comes into our orbit. Okay? So he lives his life in growing orbits, and he lives his life. Ich lebe mein Leben. He's actively living his life this way. He is seeking to widen his orbits. And he wants to move over all of the things of the world. He wants to know everything on a surface level of knowing the knowledge, but also of understanding deeply. There's a difference between knowing someone. Oh, I know their name. Their name is Adil or something, But to know them, you have to spend time with them. This is knowing them. When you are in love, you come to know someone deeply. Right? So he wants to encompass the whole world. And he says, perhaps I will never achieve the last. I will never get the whole world in my orbit. But that shall be my attempt. This is the purpose of his life, to widen himself. But what is he orbiting? He says, I'm circling God. Orbiting, circling God. And he calls God the ancient tower. This ancient tower, think of Lord of the Rings. The ancient tower that he's circling. He's circling this tower, circling God. What is God? He doesn't say what God is. It could be that God is God of the Quran. He is Allah, subhanahu wa ta'ala. Maybe he is Jesus. Maybe he is the Buddha. The Buddha isn't God, but maybe he is this, but he doesn't say. I'm circling God, the ancient tower. And I've been circling for 1,000 years. How has he been circling for 1,000 years? People only live to 100. It's kind of a mystery, right? He's been circling for 1,000 years. And what does he say about himself? And I still don't know whether I'm a falcon or a storm or a great song. So I'm not a poet myself, so we could break this apart and say, well, we know falcons circle. We know storms can circle. Can songs circle? I don't know. But he seems to see himself as a mystery. And this is a key to Rilke. As he looks inward, it looks infinite. Infinite means no beginning, no end. As he looks into himself, he sees infinity. As he gets to know himself, he doesn't even know for sure who he is. Has he lived one life? Has he lived 1,000? He doesn't know. And so he's circling this ancient tower. who it feels like he maybe doesn't even know that ancient tower well. Or maybe it's saying the ancient tower was his start. And so he started orbiting from there. I don't know for sure. Okay, it's poetry. But he's circling to encompass the world. And as he does this, he wonders who he is. How long has he been circling? How ancient is he? And in the end, he doesn't know whether he's a falcon. Is he a storm? A storm breaks upon things and showers them and tears things apart. Or is he a great song? Songs live forever as long as people have memory. We have songs from ancient times. So this is Rilke. What do you think of this? Can you relate to it? Do you feel like as you've started growing up or as you've aged, that more of the world is accessible to you? We will touch on this more next time when we talk about the other poem, Fortschritt. Und wieder rauscht mein tiefes Leben lauter. Mein tiefes Leben lauter. We will have some of the same imagery. We will talk a little bit more about English as a Germanic language as well. So I hope you're enjoying this. This is something a little bit different. If you like it, make sure to hit the like button, hit the bell icon so you keep getting notifications of our videos, and be sure to subscribe. And be sure to talk to us, comment, and talk to us on RJK English on Facebook as well so that we can have further discussion. See you next time.